Hot stove conversations about baseball, history, football, and current events that may leave you saying there's more to consider. Now, here's your host, Jack Moore.
Welcome to another edition of More to Consider. So in our episode so far, we've talked about a lot of subjects: law, the Kennedy assassination. We do like sports. We love sports. So I've met this new bestest buddy. I'm sure we're going to be friends for life now. We're going to continue to do these things. We did a show the other day together, and now he's returned the trip. His name is Kirk Buckner. And Kirk, you're now in Seattle, Washington, correct?
I am now in Seattle, Washington via Winnipeg, Manitoba, via Barbados, via Jasper, Alberta, via Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
And you now have The Buck Stops Here is your podcast.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, there's a few podcasts I do, but that's the core one. It's mostly a bi-weekly show with one of my partners, Evan Nolan, and we look at all Hall of Fame related news. And then I always try to have some other people on, much like I had yourself on recently.
Yes.
And we've had some other great athletes, some bloggers, journalists, just people to talk about Hall of Fame related stuff. Should like player X be in the Hall of Fame? And sometimes it goes other places, which is always a lot of fun too.
Now, you could probably give me some background on this. So you are Canadian by birth.
I am.
Okay. So you have, and I have actually been coaching women's softball with a friend of mine, which I never thought I would, but it's been a lot of fun. And we heavily recruit Canada. And I got to tell you, those girls are wonderful. And it's funny because they're they're like, hey, called home yesterday and it's negative 72 and all that. So it's funny to hear them talk about that weather related aspect. But the cultural differences are really not that great. I mean, there's as much regional difference in the United States as you'd have probably. Yeah. They're kind of into the same pop culture. It's not when I watch the girls interact, and we have girls from Washington State, Texas, Florida. We had a girl from the Virgin Islands last year. It's a hodgepodge. We're a rainbow. We got girls from all over the place. So it's been a lot of fun, but I wondered about that, like with what are your images that you look at as a Canadian athlete? Like, what do you see?
Bless you for saying athlete. I'm certainly not. I just talked athlete.
Right.
Yeah, I'm such a klutz. I tripped out of my mom's womb. But
and what I'm saying to these young ladies, I definitely see differences culturally in our country, in the United States, and I feel like we're certainly neighbors. Mm-hmm. And you're in the States now, but I've always found it fascinating when you grow up in different environments. I'll give you a really bad example.
I'm sure it's going to be a great example, Jeff.
No, but it's a bad example of something that went down. I was actually in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Mm-hmm. At what they called the Redskins Beach Blitz. The Virginia Beach was trying to court the training of the Redskins when it was the Redskins back in the late 2000, 08, 09 timeframe. Richmond ends up getting it. Richmond, Virginia, the capital, an hour and a half away gets it, but Virginia Beach is courting it. And it's when the Michael Vick news came out. It's when the whole Michael Vick thing came out. Who's from Newport News, Virginia. He's got this place in Surrey County out in a rural area. They think the story I heard was a kid got busted for drugs and was carrying the address of Vick's place on his license plate. So they went in to investigate drugs and found the dogs.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how the whole thing got started. But what was interesting is I'm at this event. Somebody sticks a microphone in the front of Clinton Portis, who, of course, famously went to Miami. I think he grew up in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And a guy goes, what do you think about the Michael Vick? Now, it's just come out. It's just hit the press. And Clinton Portis said he caught a lot of heat about this. But what he said was, I can take you down any dirt road in Mississippi and show you a dogfight. Something to that effect. Right. Then people were like, oh, he's saying it's okay. And other people said, nah, I'm from the South, too. You can find a dogfight. So it was a cultural thing that I think woke up the country, that there were pockets of the United States where dogfighting was pretty commonplace. Mm-hmm. And other people, especially the members of the SPCA that might have been in some other part of the country, were like shocked, like people fight dogs. So that's one of those moments where he was like, hey, what the hell's the big deal? Everybody fights dogs because in the deep South, that was a thing. So I just bring up that point that sometimes things come out in sports that kind of will let people know that reflectively how people see the world could be very different depending on where they grow up.
Well, as we're recording this, we're just a few days removed from the Four Nations Cup. And congratulations to the NHL. I think they did a phenomenal job, and the NBA should be very ashamed because over the same week, I think we saw hockey explode in the United States, even though the U.S. lost there. But I think the amount of people who watched that game, especially the Kachuk brothers, you're going to see a lot of young kids in this country, and I speak of the U.S., just like gravitate towards hockey, and while at the same time the NBA showcased a bunch of people who didn't care. And it's sort of unfortunate. You talk about all these things culturally. I just watched something from CBC, which is the Canadian National Network, and they dedicated 2 minutes as to why Wayne Gretzky should have a statue removed. Not, I don't know if they said removed, but in Edmonton there's Wayne Gretzky Parkway, which I've driven on, and it's because Gretzky's a friend of Trump's. It's like, okay, I don't care if they're best friends. He did more for Canadian hockey than anyone else. It's a weird thing watching the culture between our two countries sort of change, and a lot of my Canadian friends and relatives are now openly going to boycott U.S. products.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's very interesting because I'm 52, and when I was a kid, maybe other Canadians my age might disagree with me, and which is fine, but I was always obsessed with sports and pop culture. The late 70s, early 80s, you're growing up, it's like, man, our TV shows stink. And we never win anything on the international level in sports. I don't know if I mentioned this to you last time. I mean, Canada is the only country to host the Olympics twice, one summer, one winter, without winning a gold medal. It kind of gets to you a little bit. Now, you can't tell the difference between a Canadian production and an American production. Canada has now excelled on the international stage in multiple sports. I actually won a great beer bet with Canada playing the United States in FIBA. Because we've come so far in basketball and so many other things, but it's a very strange thing. In some ways, I'm a hippy dippy liberal type. Just live and let live. I just like people.
A libertarian.
There you go.
It's pretty much. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of friends who have completely different views than I do, and I don't. As long as you're not forcing me to believe what you do, we're going to get along just fine.
Well, that's a libertarian, believe me. Well,
okay,
and let me bring up something else that's kind of personal to me that I saw. And when you tell these stories, of course, we're broadcasting stories off the top of our head, but I'm almost going to be positive I'm exactly right about this. In the area where I work with local kids, one kid I never had hands-on as an instructor, but got to know later with Ryan Zimmerman. So Ryan's the first pick when Montreal comes to Washington. He's the very first pick of the organization as the Washington Nationals. He's from Virginia Beach. He was born in Washington, North Carolina. His parents moved to Virginia Beach when he was a kid, and he went to high school, went to the University of Virginia, and he played with Mark Reynolds. Mark's on a bobblehead over here. Mark, I did do lessons with young. Ryan is about as fine a human being in baseball I've ever met. If he hears this, I hope he hears it. He's a beautiful guy, great guy, always pulled for him. And one year when they were in the process, I think, of opening the new stadium, he marches President Barack Obama out to throw out the first pitch. Like, he's the ambassador of the team. He's a Virginia guy, DC team, and they went from old RFK Stadium and they've opened the new stadium. And I think it's in that time frame. I do remember he's on the field with Barack Obama, and he's shaking his hand and doing all the respect to the office stuff. Fast forward, they win the World Series. He goes to the White House. Many players did not when Trump was president. And I was reading in these comments because they won it in 17, right? 17. Yeah, because Boston won it in 18. So Trump's in the White House. So they do the invite to the White House. And this is what I remember about it. I'm reading comments on the film of the meeting, and some players wouldn't go because it was Trump, is my memory. But this is what I do remember. Ryan goes and is very complimentary to the president. He said something like, "Hey, Mr. President, keep making America great again. I'm in there for you." Now, he's already been in an environment where he was very friendly to Barack. I don't even know what Ryan's politics are. I don't even know what his politics are. But he's at the White House, and he says something kind of nice. I'm looking at comments, die, you SOB. How dare you? Oh, God, there was a portion of the city that completely turns on him. And he is the neatest guy. He used to do a fundraiser for his mom. I believe it's MS. I mean, I know that she had been stricken at some time ago when he was a kid, and he would do fundraisers for her, and I think including using the stadium. And the one great thing about Ryan I can tell you is one of his buddies got drafted in the 21st round the day after he was drafted 4 overall. I'm at the party of the 21st rounder, and he shows up for his friend. That's what he's like, right? So my only point in all of saying all that is he was very respectful for Barack Obama, did his national's duty of greeting the president on the field, and then at the White House thing, seems to be somewhat complimentary or friendly to Trump. But it was the response of people that really shocked me. It was like, die in hell, you bastard. How dare you be on Trump's support? Well, and it happened to Brady, too, to some degree. Brady had the cap. And my understanding of that is he played golf with Trump in like 2015. And he gave him a cap. And so he throws it in his locker. So these guys are innocently like, hey, what's the pass route on such and such on that play? And somebody sees the cap. And Brady's like, oh, yeah, I played with Trump one day. Now all hell breaks loose. He's a white supremacist Nazi type. I'm like, good God. I mean, I think the cap in his locker was even an afterthought. Now, I don't know where we are in this whole thing now, whether it's getting better. But like you say, Gretzky, he's a god in Canada, I'm sure, which he should be.
Well, and he is to me. So, like, when they dedicated the time to, like, this one fan and whatnot, just to give him some oxygen. Oh, he's got to be accountable for his actions. What actions? Okay, so to my knowledge, and I'm more than happy to be proven wrong on this, I don't ever remember Wayne Gretzky ever saying anything political. I think Gretzky is just a great hockey player who likes people. And also they were upset because he was giving thumbs up as he was walking across the U.S. bench. Well, he knows a lot of those guys. I mean, like, he's probably lived in the U.S. maybe longer than he has in Canada. But is he cheering for Canada? Absolutely he is, but he's going to show respect, and that was like one of those things that bothered me. I mean, I have my little chat group for Hall of Fame stuff. Some are far left wing, some are far right wing, and I'm the fence post turtle. I'm just a visitor in your circus, and I think in Canada, you were talking about cultural stuff before. One thing that I think we do way better than the U.S. when they call an election, it's 40 days. That's it. So like there's not so much divisiveness. A lot of people in my country despise Justin Trudeau. I don't like him either, but I will pound beers and crush beers and shoot the crap with anyone who says, I really like the guy. Oh, okay, no, fine. Let's talk about something else.
Well, and I mean, our countries were certainly, in the same hemisphere, and we're certainly adjacent. But I got, because some of what I do in this space is talk about the Constitution and politics and things. And we're so far from the original intent of the Constitution that, the whole throw out, we live in a democracy. No, we don't. Democracy is never mentioned in the founding documents because it's not a democracy. It's a representative republic. All they intended for us as Americans to ever vote for was the members of the House. The Senate was selected by the state legislatures, and the president was to be selected by electors selected by the state legislatures. So I think part of the tension, the cultural tension we have, is that the executive branch has become so powerful that you begin to really balance how your life's going to be led. If you were more separated from that type of one power structure being able to determine so much of your life, it wouldn't mean as much to you. So the framers would have thought, and I believe this, that the states were like their own little nations that came together for the common defense. Then there was a very few things that the federal government was involved in. So the president's just kind of being the commander in chief and overseeing the very few things the federal government has any authority in. Now it's become top down, and it's so top down that I think that people are voting with thinking my life's going to depend on who the president is, which is bizarre to me. But, that's kind of how the structure's become. And that's what makes it so divisive. And all right, let me get back to something else, because the Hall of Fame space.
Yes, sorry about that.
No. I think that's good. That's good.
I'm Canadian, so I have to say I'm sorry.
That's right. All right. So I'm watching something the other day about baseball and potential Hall of Famers, blah, blah, blah. And they got into, I know that the Hall of Fame was founded in 1939. It was placed in Cooperstown, New York. I've been there. It's a phenomenal place. It's incredible. I mean, that part of New York's most, I've been in a lot of places in the U.S. It's a pretty incredible. New York State is amazing for beauty. The state is. I mean, away from this, city I like just fine, but the state of New York is beautiful, especially at central up towards upstate New York. So anyway, I've been to Cooperstown, and the guy was making the point that people think that MLB, Major League Baseball, has some real connection to it, and it does not. It's an independent, right?
Yeah.
And then they got into the voting criteria, how it's changed, what's been discussed, how, one of the famous ones, because I read the Lee Montville biography of Ted Williams. I think about as interesting American as we've ever had. To be a Marine Corps pilot, 2 wars, maybe the best hitter in baseball, pretty tough guy, extremely intelligent. And the press hated him as much as he hated them. It was a bad relationship. So when it comes time, he retires in 1960. And most everybody's like, he's a can't miss first ballot guy. And Mariano Rivera, to my knowledge, is the first guy to ever get 100%. And there were writers like, nah, screw Ted Williams. I'm not going to give him 100%. So then you ask yourself, if you're a writer that gets there in that space where you can vote for a Hall of Fame, you don't vote for Ted Williams. You shouldn't be there, I think is what I'm saying. Like, you can't look at Ted Williams and say he's not a Hall of Famer. Some guys might be borderline. Ted Williams is not.
Right.
So go ahead.
Well, no, it's just so many. I mean, like, I don't have a problem with Mariano Rivera getting in 100% because I just sort of extolled his virtues. My problem with Rivera being 100% is that he's the first.
Well, that's kind of my point. Like, Ted Williams should have been, Hank Aaron should have been, Willie Mays should have been, Mickey Mantle probably should. I mean, Mickey Mantle's in that space. The back end of Mickey Mantle's career wasn't what the start. But Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, well, now we get to the next part. Well, let me ask you this. Sure. Where are you on the Rose? Where are you on the Bonds? Where are you with Clemens? Where are you with that whole argument?
Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'll start with the latter part. For PEDs, for me,
right,
I am all for Bonds and Clemens going in.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that is we all remember the Mitchell Report of 2004, but I think what some people forget is prior to that point, there was no agreement between MLB and the Players Union about performance-enhancing drugs. It was legal. Technically. Well, not technically. It was legal. I mean,
or it wasn't illegal.
It wasn't illegal. That's a
right.
better, you're right. That's a better way to sort of say
right.
that. So, and everyone sort of knew what was going on and they benefited from it. We all remember, you talk about Tom Brady in his locker. Let's think about Mark McGwire in his locker with the bottle of Andro. And people were asking that, and some of the reporters who were asked that were then chastised later for how dare you do that? And then I don't want to go all racial and political here, but then I think things changed when a surly black man in Barry Bonds shattered everything. And I'm sure for some people it was, some people it wasn't, but baseball is also very protective about numbers and stats. Von Miller, I don't know when he's going to retire. I don't know if he's seen his last game. Von Miller has been suspended for PEDs and for social misconduct. It won't affect him at all in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Probably not.
Yeah. And I'm a big proponent of Von Miller going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, by the way. But with the PED guys, with Clemens and Bonds, who, let's be blunt, the writers knew they were juicing. Or at least they had to suspect that, voted Clemens a 7-time Cy Young winner, Bonds a 7-time MVP. And most of them are the same people who decide on who gets in the Hall of Fame. So for me, if you did something before 2004, I don't have a problem with that because baseball didn't. So with A-Rod, who has outstanding statistics, should be a Hall of Famer.
No doubt.
Suspended twice because he broke the rule based on what his union sort of agreed to. That's my line.
You brought up, and I think you're absolutely on point, consistent. So I have a friend of mine that's I want to get into the timeline too, though, what you just said, because, it's an interesting point. Baseball has a strike, 94. Montreal probably would have won it all that year.
Good chance of that, yeah.
Hey, how about, we were talking about the other day, I was talking with a friend of mine that pitched 13 years in the big leagues, and he said it was like a faucet in Montreal with outfielders. It was Dawson, Cromartie, Valentine, Larry Walker, Marquise Grissom, Tim Raines. All those guys were coming out. Rondell White.
Bursting with a smile because of the mention of Ellis Valentine.
Well, now that's the guy that some other guys that have been friends of mine that played in that era said he was like the most freakishly gifted guy, strong, arm strength, speed, big guy. Yeah. And I think he had some off the field, maybe a little bit too or something, but God bless him. I mean, he was a phenomenal talent. But Montreal was running all that through. You go Montreal, the 94 season, a lot of fans, of course, were upset by 95. We didn't even have a World Series. And I don't know who sits in the boardroom, if it's a bunch of guys smoking a cigar, guys smoking cigars or whatever, deciding, you know what we need? We need home runs to go through the roof. We need a nice story. So you have McGwire, white guy, played at Southern Cal, and you have Sammy Sosa, not a white guy from the Dominican Republic, who is a very likable person.
And played the media like a fiddle at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of my best Dominican friends grew up with him. They're very, very close. I have a Dominican friend that knows everybody. He went to school with David Ortiz. I mean, he sent me a picture the other day with him in pool holes. I'm getting ready to do a show with him here soon.
Nice.
All those guys in Santo Domingo, apparently, like they all know each other. So he knows a lot of people, but yeah, so I'm thinking Sosa's a likable guy. Clearly in the media, you're right, he played it well. So they're hugging each other, slapping, they're forearm pumping, and they're doing all that stuff, and everybody's buying in, and America wants to believe that McGwire wins it. And remember, I'm trying to remember the exact number, Sosa was ahead of him one more time before he bypassed him for the final time. I think it might have been at 66 or one of those early, because remember, McGwire hit 62 first. But then there was a moment, I think, that Sosa actually bypassed him, and then McGwire had the 4 home run weekend where he went from 66 to 70. But anyway, he gets to 70. I have to go back and check that. But he gets to 70, and Sosa ends up with 66. And now a number is shattered. 61 is shattered, and, all the history has been changed. I don't remember, as something we'd have to kind of go back and look at time-wise, when does the real ideas about maybe there was a cheating era going on? Because along comes Bonds.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I think so too, but
didn't play media friendly, right?
Well, see, now Bonds will say that his father didn't receive the best treatment. I know, I have a friend, I'm telling about this other friend, he played with Bonds. Bonds Sr., or his dad, Bobby, was a great player.
Absolutely.
No doubt. And who's his godfather? Barry's godfather is Willie Mays.
Willie Mays, yeah.
Right. So you have all that black men that grew up in the States that probably didn't, well, certainly Willie Mays and Bobby Bonds, Willie Mays especially, didn't have the greatest treatment coming into professional baseball. Especially in the era that, Willie Mays he just passed away, was born in 1930 or 31. I think it was 31. I think he was 93 when he passed.
Might be the GOAT.
He's it. My Mount Rushmore, let's say that. My Mount Rushmore are the greatest players. It's going to be Ruth. It's going to be Willie Mays. I got Ted in there. So I just think Ted Williams is the greatest hitter of all time. Then it gets kind of blurry because I think Koufax comes in as a pitcher. I think Bob Gibson. There's too many other guys. So we can go different routes on that.
Yeah, that could be a conversation for another time.
That's a tough one. Yeah. But back to Bonds has said, Barry Bonds has said, my dad was big growing up on, watch out for the media. They're there to, to try to find that thing you say, it's going to upset them or it's going to make a bad story on you. And he was prickly to the media, very much like Ted Williams was. I mean, but in a different era. And I don't think a lot of people thought that Bonds was the most likable guy. I have watched in the last 4 to 5 years, Bonds in media going, I wasn't the nicest guy. I wish I had it to do all over. Something to the effect that, even he feels like maybe. So on the race thing, I think that.
I don't know. I hate.
No, we don't. But I want to consider it. I do want to consider it. I do want to consider, did Bonds get a greater amount of heat? Because then you look at Clemens. Was Clemens the nicest guy to the media or whatever? I mean, he was a tough guy. He was a tough guy. He is a tough guy.
No, but breaking a home run record, and Clemens wasn't necessarily, that's the most hallowed record in Major League.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, if let's say it's reverse and Bonds was a pitcher and Clemens was the batter, it's possible that the same vitriol goes there. I don't know. I mean, it's...
Well, if you were going to say McGwire dodged a lot of vitriol, I think you're... But I do think some of it is how it played out in time. Because McGwire did play the likable guy. He did. He played that.
He's a decent dude. which is probably why he's still working in MLB today.
Well, that's some of the stuff that Bonds has talked about too. He's had some jobs as a hitting coach. And as a coach, I know, but as a coach, I got to tell you, this is one of the major tensions, and something we talked about off the air a little bit the other day. There's a huge thing going on in professional baseball that I think most fans are aware of. If they saw Moneyball, I read the book twice, I listened to it on tape twice, I've seen the movie 100 times. You know, the movie, like any movie, kind of covers parts of it, but there's stuff deep down in the Moneyball story that has created this world of stat nerds in professional baseball. And you've got tobacco chewing old guys that are scouts. And I kind of side with them more. They see a prospect. They're like, yep, that kid moves right. And then some guy goes, punch it. Well, his walk to this ratio, you know, and so there is this battle between what the numbers suggest versus what the eyes tell us. And is that guy a projectable major leaguer? Mm-hmm. So in all that tension that's going on, you get into the question of coaching. And there's a school of thought that and I'm not trying to really knock anybody in particular, but sometimes the worst teachers as coaches will be the ones that could do it because they have no earthly idea how they did it. Or they're trying to teach to somebody maybe something they did that felt right to them, all those different things. So Charlie Lau was a 211 hitter. I don't want to disparage the man, but he was a minor league guy, basically. I think he got a cup of coffee.
But he overachieved.
No, but I'm saying he goes on to be a hitting coach. And some guys have success. They're like, oh, the 230 A-ball hitter just taught me how to hit. And I heard a story, and again, I'm spitballing, but I remember a story about when Frank Robinson was the player manager for the Indians. He was player manager when he was the first black manager in baseball. One day they're down like 4-3 in the ninth inning. Give me a bat. He grabs the bat, hits a 3-run homer, and wins the game. And then he comes in he looks in the dugout like, guys, that's all you got to do is just hit the ball over the fence. I mean, he's Frank Robinson. So if you're a coach or a teacher and your go-to is, I was good, listen to me, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate to the athlete.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about Gretzky earlier. Gretzky is probably the greatest. I think Bobby Orr is the greatest hockey player of all time, but
I'm a fan.
Gretzky is the greatest offensive player of all time. Leaps and bounds. I don't care when Ovechkin breaks his record, but Gretzky's still the GOAT to me in terms of offense.
Right.
But Gretzky as a coach, he can't explain what he does because he thinks in 5D chess. It's impossible for him to relate that. You know, we were talking about Bonds. I remembered an interview. I think I read this in Sports Illustrated. God, I missed those magazines, huh?
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
He said that he was inspired by, do you remember a catcher named Mike LaValliere?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pirates.
Yeah, so when they were Pirates teammates, Mike Spanky LaValliere, because he looked like Spanky from the Little Rascals, and LaValliere, this short, squat guy, batted 300 over, he actually had him beat by 50 points. And he says, I'm inspired by him because, how is he able to bat higher than I am?
Right.
And it's just... Also, he's a catcher and just sees everything differently. Still, that might also be why your best managers are not necessarily the best players.
Absolutely. It's what Earl Weaver said. Earl Weaver said bad players make the best managers. He washed out in Double-A as a middle infielder, and he said, I had to learn everything because I wasn't a good player, so I had to figure out how to turn the double play or when to hit and run. I'm paying attention. I'll tell you something my friend Tom House told me one time. This was crazy. He said when he played in Richmond, Virginia, he played with Bobby Cox and he played with Tony La Russa.
Wow.
In the minors. And he said what was funny because they both just went in the Hall of Fame as managers. And he said after the game, they would sit for 3 hours and say, what would you have done in the second inning there? Would you have moved that runner? That's what they did. And he goes, and I remember Tom was a pitcher because I remember seeing these two middle infielders, Bobby Cox was a corner infielder. But they would spend all this time talking about baseball, and they're players at the time. But he said, I knew then those guys are going to be great managers because they're really consumed in how the game's being played and he goes, and I tell you something he told me too, from a player's perspective. I tell kids this, I think it's just old man, whatever you think you know, but Tom told me one time he played with Carl Yastrzemski in Boston, and he played with Hank Aaron. Well, his claim to fame is he caught Hank Aaron. April 8th, 1974, he caught Aaron's home run, 7:15 in the bullpen for Atlanta. That's what Tom did. So Tom played with Aaron and Yastrzemski. And I'm sitting around with Tom one time, and he's talking to a group of kids, and he said, you know what sticks out? And this is a totally unfair question, but he said, there was one thing about those two players that I could say always stuck with me the whole time I played with them. And he goes, I never saw either one of them ever make a mental error. And I was like, when he said, I was like, well, he goes, never threw the wrong base, never made a base running mistake. Because I saw him make a physical error, like ground ball through the leg. But he goes, I never saw either one of them ever make a mental error, ever do the thing, miss a sign. Whatever they were doing, they did as a professional exactly right. They're both Hall of Famers. They're two of the greatest players ever. Yastrzemski was a great player. I got my Red Sox stuff. He was a really great player. But I just thought when he told me, I'm like, wow, the thing you remember about those guys is they never made a mental error. Think about that.
Yeah.
That they went, he played, a few years with them. Back to the Hall of Fame thing. Do you think, let me ask you this then, go to this. Do you think there's a better way for let's start with Major League Baseball. Is there a better way for whatever body makes this decision to make the decisions on who's in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I guess I'll do the compliment sandwich here. Applaud the Baseball Hall of Fame for being open and honest about the vote tallies. A lot of the halls don't do that at all. So, that's a good thing. I liked what they were doing before when they had their ballot for 15 years. I personally believe they shrinked it from 15 to 10 to try to get a lot of the controversial players out and get them out quickly. Okay. So I think overall they do a good job. I do think that maybe there should be, like in politics, term limits.
That's been talked about.
Yeah, and there are some people who have been doing that for a long time, and it's not that they can't come back to it, but there's a lot of people who could qualify for, I'm not one of them because I'm not going to join that union or whatever, but maybe I should. But I'd have to be doing that for 10 years, and I ain't doing that. But
I guess what I'm asking too is, I remember Dexter Manley when he played for the Redskins. He was quite a character.
I remember him very well because he played in the CFL.
Yeah. Great player. Yeah. And one of the things that he said one year, he was in there with Lawrence Taylor, like leading the league in sacks every year or pretty close to it. And he wasn't making Pro Bowls at one point. And somebody asked him, like, Dexter, why don't you make more Pro Bowls? He goes, because I slap around that tackle, that offensive tackle. I'm slapping him upside the head, telling him he's my bitch and whatever. And I'm talking that. He doesn't like me. Now he doesn't like me. The guard beside him that heard it, nobody likes me. Then he mentioned some other star players. He goes, that guy beats the tackle around and gets the sack. And then he pats the tackle on the ass and goes, hey, that was an almost good block you made. And I just beat you. And, how's the family doing? And that guy, hey, I like that guy. So he goes, I talk trash. I'm not liked. The players are the ones then voting for who gets into the Pro Bowl. So I say that to say, if you let the players pick, who would be in the best position to think of who is a Hall of Famer? It'd probably be the players. Really. But some have said the umpires. But then umpires don't like players.
But everyone's got a bias, though, right?
Everybody does, exactly. That's why
people voting on people.
Yes.
So when you look at the baseball writers, and you sort of talked about that, Ted Williams rubbed some people the wrong way.
Everybody.
Yeah, you're right. So it's like
in the press.
Okay, so like I'm a sarcastic guy, but when I cross a border and when I'm in an airport, I dial it to 0. Because these are those gatekeepers who can sort of do a few things.
Right.
And I think we see that over and over and over again, where it's just like, well, I'm not going to vote for him because he didn't take my question. Like, I don't know. But you're certainly going to get that because, like you said, Ted Williams is a phenomenal example. Especially because he wasn't part of that first group where it's next to impossible to vote everyone unanimous because there were so many great ones. But when Ted Williams, he would have been eligible, 60?
He went in 66. Okay. I know he retired in 60, but I remember his induction was 66. And part of what I remember was he was the first person to say that the Negro League players belonged in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He was the first person to say that.
I didn't know that he was the first person to say that. But
I'll tell you some more about his history.
Fantastic that he did.
His mother was Mexican.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that.
she was a member of the Salvation Army, and she was all out of the house. And the father was kind of in and out, I think. Matter of fact, he grew up in California. Bobby Dorr was in California. Dom DiMaggio was one of his best friends. When I said that biography, Lee Montville's book, the guys that are at Ted Williams' bedside when he's dying, it's Johnny Pesky, Bobby Dorr, Dom DiMaggio. They love him. They're the brothers.
Yeah.
And one of them said, I remember on an interview, said that Ted was literally the first of the latchkey kids. Mom was never home because she was doing Salvation Army stuff. And the father was out doing whatever he was doing. And he was really left to his own devices to make time for himself to do things. He's born in 1918 in San Diego. But what's interesting is Pumpsie Green, who was the first black man to play for the Boston Red Sox. He's Cornell Green that played defensive back for the Cowboys. It's his brother. There's a story where he said, I go into the locker room. I'm scared to death. I'm the first black guy for the Red Sox, 1959, 12 years after Jackie Robinson. They finally integrate the Red Sox. And he goes, I walk in and I'm like, I don't know if anybody's going to accept me. And this guy goes, hey, we'll go get a catch. You want to go throw with me? It's Ted Williams.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, Ted Williams. He goes, he puts his arm around me, takes care of everything for me. He's always there for me. So people were talking later about, what was it about Ted Williams? Because another guy that loved him was Satchel Paige. Satchel Paige says Ted was always ahead on race. So the story is Ted Williams, who grew up getting some snide remarks about his Mexican heritage, was always sensitive to race. He was way ahead on race.
I was not aware of that he was half Mexican. He just seemed like
mom.
the type of person who was just like this uber competitor. It's like
he was.
If I don't have the best here, then I didn't compete. Then I didn't do what I needed to. Like, or I didn't live up to my potential. I think, what was it? I read, you probably obviously know this better than I do, but where he was about to in the final game, he was where he batted the last player.
He was 3.996, I think, going into the last day. If he said he got the 400 right, and he played the doubleheader and went 6 for 8.
Yeah, because he said, like, if I can't do it in a full season, then I don't deserve it. Yeah, which is like one of the most amazing competitive things, because we're not that far removed from, who was it? I want to say, I might be wrong on this, Melky Cabrera, who sat down. Apologies.
No, I don't know if he did. He won he was the last man to win the Triple Crown, but I'd have to go back and look to see. Miguel Cabrera just won the Triple Crown for the first time since Jazz.
Melky Cabrera for the batting title.
Oh, for the title? Yeah, it may have.
Yeah, so like, and apologies if I have this wrong, but I'm pretty sure in the last 10, 15 years, there was one player who just sort of like sat out to try to preserve it.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened. And, last thing I'll say about Williams, he's a product of his environment. He was big on the Jimmy Fund, cancer research for children. And there was a story in Sports Illustrated, and I'll probably get some of this wrong. People can look it up for themselves, but this is the way I remember it. There was a man that died fairly young who had a daughter, probably early 20s, and a new husband. And when the dad dies, they're clearing out his things. And the new husband says, oh my God, new wife in her 20s, do you know what this stuff is? And she goes, yeah, my dad used to talk about when he was a kid in Boston, he kind of got to know some player. And the guy's like, this is Ted Williams. And she's like, okay. And the father had never really spoken of it. So he was like, we got to go to spring training. So the story they said in Sports Illustrated was Ted Williams would take in kids, especially underprivileged kids, take them to lunch, buy them things. And they say in a lot, it might have been the psychology of he had a poor upbringing, he felt. So he was very nice to kids. So all these teammates would say he'd do anything for a kid. He saw a kid in the stands, needed a hot dog, he'd take care of that. So he apparently had a nickname for this guy that had just passed away. And they go to spring training. I've been around Ted Williams once. I saw him at a hot stove convention or a hot stove dinner. And he stood up and said, young man, one day you're going to tell your grandchildren you saw Ted Williams. And he was tall, lean, and good looking. That's how he opened, right? So he's a huge guy, huge figure, bigger than life presence. So they say that this girl goes to spring training. I think it's when the Red Sox were in Winter Haven, and they just kind of stand around. Here comes Ted on a golf cart. Somebody's bringing him in because he's a hitting instructor. He's there for spring training. And all these people, Ted, autograph, please. He won't look. He won't even look at people. And then, whatever what's a good name? Billy Snookums, whatever. She yells out, "Do you remember that name?" And his head whips around and said, "Who said that? Who said that?" And she goes, "Me." "How do you know that name?" "It was my dad." Everybody parts. Like everybody gets it. He goes, "Come here, honey." And they go walking in the outfield. And he finds out that he died. And Ted gets a little emotional. And he hugs her. And the husband's like, whoa. He knew that. So he had given this guy that's her father. This is that side of Ted Williams. He had given him this nickname, gave him bats, balls, autograph things, which were all in the garage, which she never paid attention to. And it's her new husband that goes, "Do you realize what this stuff is?" Mm-hmm. And she has no idea. So they go to spring training. When he hears the name, he stops everything. He goes, "Who said that? Come here, honey." They go talk and walk. And he's very emotional to find out he had passed.
That's a great story.
He's an interesting cat, Williams.
That's a shame what sort of his son did, I guess.
Well, that's an interesting point, too. He had 3 children. 2 were on the side of whatever happened after his passing. And I think the other, one daughter was from one wife. He was married 3 times. I think one daughter was from one wife. And then the other 2 children was from his last wife. So I think there was some tension. I don't know. I can't speak to the Williams family, but yeah, the son passed away too, but there was all the fight over how things would be handled after his death. And it was kind of a mess. Yeah. But what's interesting in the Montville book, I mean to tell you, DiMaggio comes off being the best guy in there, Dom DiMaggio. Oh yeah. He was he loved Ted Williams, and Ted Williams almost quit over Dom. Dom went in and asked for like back in that time, like a $500 raise. And Yawkey wouldn't give it to him, and he quit. He quit at 31. He walked away from baseball. And Williams was pissed off because Dom was his guy. He played center beside him and left. And I think, they're all from California because, Dom and Joe DiMaggio from San Francisco. They're Italian fishermen, that grow up in that part of the world. So I think that even Joe and Ted, although rivals, I think they were close. I think that there was a closeness because they respected each other.
Well, Dom was a pretty good player in his own right.
Great player. He was like a 290 hitter. He was a punch guy, put the ball down, bunt, but he was a great center fielder. Yeah. And then they say Vince, the other brother, had the greatest arm.
Really?
There was another brother. He never got to the big leagues, or maybe a little bit, but it was Vince, Joe, and Dominique. Yeah, 3 brothers. And Vince played in the Pacific Coast League for years. And I, just didn't have the same type of career. So we're talking a little bit about the Hall of Fame. Let me ask you this question philosophically. Who is it for?
No one's ever asked me that. I guess in theory, the fans.
Right.
Yeah. As much as it means something to the respective player after they're sort of done. There's only one giant accolade left, which is the Hall. But I think it means far more to the fans than it does to the player. More often.
Well, and the reasoning, when I was watching what I watched recently that I was talking about, they said the reasoning early on was 1939. Mm-hmm. Who are really the only people who have seen Major League Baseball? Players, some fans that saw other teams come in, mm-hmm. and the writers. And so they said the reason they went to the writers as sort of the objective, non-bias at whatever level was because you didn't have television. You had radio calls where you got some type of idea what a player looked like, from the way some guy described him on the radio. But your average M1A1 fan, they haven't really seen that much Major League Baseball. Even if they're a season ticket holder, they've seen parts of one league. They haven't seen everybody. If you're in Boston, you don't really know what Mays looks like in the National League or vice versa. You're a Yankees fan. You don't.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that I'm wondering now, is it obsolete? In the end, should the fans be able to vote? Or should it be a combination weighted, writers, players, and fans?
Maybe some kind of combination because, I'm going to use pro football as an example. So the Pro Football Hall of Fame they do this annually. They put out a preliminary list, and then they have their own vote where they allow fans to go on and give their points, which is really just sort of like an email grab, but whatever. You will see players from certain teams. I feel bad sort of like signaling out one player, but I'll do that. Nick Collins, former Packer. One time he sort of like appeared in the top 10. Nick Collins is not a top 10 player in any preliminary list. He was a very good football player, but different fan groups are just larger than others in all sports.
Right.
I mean, like, as you saw sort of like by my mug, I'm a Saints fan. My fan group is a lot smaller than yours.
Right.
So it stands to reason that fans will sort of flood things. I mean, you can take what they do, but you have to put a bias towards it. I mean, like, even on what I do in non-Hall of Fame, we have open votes. And every year I rejigger what I have. For example, like before we went on, and after we go on, I'm reworking the Baseball Hall of Fame list and the Football Hall of Fame list of the 300 people who should be considered. I sort of have to play with my own emotions too, because like, for example, in football, Donovan McNabb is hated by the people who vote on my site. Kind of know why.
As potentially a Hall of Famer?
I think Donovan McNabb is a lot better than he gets credit for.
Yeah.
I mean, McNabb said, and he's not wrong, you put Mike's stats against Aikman and they're near the same.
I believe that.
And that's true. And he didn't have Emmitt Smith. He didn't have Michael Irvin. The best wide receiver he ever had was Terrell Owens, and that was for 1 year. And Terrell Owens is not exactly known for getting along with his quarterbacks.
They certainly didn't. Yeah,
they did not.
It appeared they did not. Yeah.
Well, no, they definitely did not. And Philly is also that rough town.
Yes.
Jalen Hurts is going to be able to sort of like get a free beer for the rest of his life because he brought them a Super Bowl. Donovan McNabb won't. And is that fair? No.
Yeah, and you know what's tough though too? When I watched Aikman play, he got drafted number 1 on the worst team in football, as you are, and Jimmy Johnson came in with the plan to have another losing season, but be able to, unload Walker and the draft choices, the whole story. And he went and got a bunch of physical talent. They turned it around in 3 years. So I think sometimes I feel like it's unfair sometimes the way that Aikman is. I think his career high for touchdowns in the season was 20. Like literally like 20.
I don't know for sure, but you're probably not far off.
Yeah. And so, you don't ever want to use the tag game manager like some guys get as kind of like lesser than, but but when he had what he had, and they had the 3 wins Super Bowls in 4 years, it might be best put that he did manage it within what he had to do. And his role was not to light up the scoreboard with passes. But I think he's also statistically one of the great quarterbacks for completion percentage. So he didn't turn the ball over a lot. He hit his target a lot. And I think he played within the situation he needed to. Now, I've seen a lot on Aikman talking about Jimmy Johnson out and how things slid from that point. And he had a rough end of the 90s. When that thing fell apart, it was bad, and it went down. Switzer's in there. Switzer's able to take one more year, knock the guy, but 95, he's pretty much carrying Jimmy Johnson's team to win another. And Aikman has said we had no business winning that Super Bowl.
He George Seiferded it.
Could be argued, yes. And then, so when you see the second half of Aikman's career, and we mentioned this, I think, the first time we talked, the one guy I think we don't really, not you and me, but I think one guy that really got a serious black eye earlier in his career was John Elway. I think Elway was taking super inferior teams all the way to the Super Bowl, getting his ass handed to him and getting a bad image of a losing quarterback in the Super Bowl. When I'm looking at it, I'm like, damn, that guy might be the best in the game, or he's in the conversation. Now, in the back end of his career, he gets a running game. He gets 2 Super Bowl rings. He's a shell physically of his former self. He's still a great quarterback. But I always wondered, like, if he ends up, take Dan Marino, he is the next to last pick in the 1983 draft. For whatever rumors were out there, but he went to the Dolphins, who just played in the Super Bowl. So it wasn't like Marino didn't walk into pretty good situation. If you're going to be picked in the first round, you don't want to be picked in the first round, but you're going to a winning team. So he was able to step in with Don Shula in a pretty good system. And I'm not saying Elway walked into the worst in Denver, but that is kind of the history of a number 1 overall pick. and it might have been part of the insulation on Montana, is he was third round. Steve DeBerg is there. Nobody's expecting him to be the savior. And he's on a really bad team with the Fenners.
Mm-hmm.
But Walsh sees something in him. You know the rest of the story. You can say the same thing about Brady. Brady wasn't on a bad team. Brady was a 6th-round pick in an organization that was starting on an upturn again from the mid-'90s. That, the 2000 season, they're starting a little upturn again. And they got Bill Belichick as the coach. I just wonder, I guess what I'm saying is I wonder how many guys out there that get picked first, they're getting such a bad luck of the draw. Such a bad, there's such a bad situation. Can they really overcome it?
Not only that, in terms of the Hall of Fame, there's so much more on you.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember, I'm sure I did. I'm sure I watched Tom Brady play at Michigan, but nothing comes to mind.
Me neither.
Yeah, and because I've watched, I'll watch college football every Saturday. When I was, at that point, I would have been back in Canada when it would have been more likely, because I was growing up in Toronto, in that area. So that probably, I'm sure I did.
Right.
I can't remember a damn one of them.
Right.
But when Brady sort of took over for Bledsoe, I think my first thought was, who's this guy? And, there's something to that. I mean, like when you're drafted number 1, in whatever league it is, maybe less for baseball, because the baseball draft doesn't get a whole lot of overall coverage. But yeah, with football, if you're just average, it changes your narrative. So as a Saints guy, right? So like I always say, my biggest thing against Phillip Rivers is, okay, you abandoned Drew Brees for Phillip Rivers. Well, who won a Super Bowl? Who had the better career? And sometimes these narratives matter. Maybe they matter more to me than others. If people disagree, that's fine. But it's not just the stats; it's the story you tell. And I'm sort of a believer with all the sports that I cover. It's your stats, it's your advanced stats, it's your playoff clutch performances, and your narrative. And I'm kind of bigger on the narrative than more than anything else. Like, I can argue that, and I have, I'm going to go to hockey if that's okay. All right, so as a Canadian, right, the biggest goal we ever had, the first goal that sort of put us on the sports map, was Paul Henderson's goal in the Summit Series of 72. If you look at Paul Henderson's overall NHL career, it's But Paul Henderson came alive in that Summit Series in the most important, at that point in time, tournament, maybe still to this day, you could argue that, in Canadian hockey, which is still the biggest country in hockey. Is he a Hall of Famer for that? And I think, yeah, he is. Well, if he didn't get the winning goal, then he wouldn't be. But he did.
That's an interesting point.
It's like Bill Mazeroski.
Yeah.
Baseball. If Bill Mazeroski doesn't hit that game-winning home run in Game 7, is he in the Hall of Fame? Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a friend of mine it's kind of back into the Moneyball thing. He tells me that no matter how hard you look, everything that happens in sports is a random sample of whatever that person's ability is. And the Ted Williams bad 1946 World Series. Now, he hurt his elbow right before the series.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. They played one exhibition game. They're waiting on the Cardinals for the World Series. So they play an exhibition game. He runs into the wall and injures his elbow, and then has a horrible World Series. That's his only one World Series. But Bonds kind of wore it too, not so great with the Pirates in the playoffs, and then with the Giants, There was questions. So, to this friend, the lawyer buddy of mine, highly educated, he's like, no, everything's just random. And I said, I'm sorry, but my eyes tell me this. You can't say David Ortiz isn't the most clutch person that ever played baseball. I'm a Sox fan, I get it. But he carries them in 2004 to the comeback against the Yankees. In the 2013 series, I think the team hit 150 and he hit 650 against the Cardinals. Like, he literally hit like 650 in the series. And I know this. There are points and times that the game is in the balance. Like Dave Roberts, he doesn't steal second. The Red Sox never have the 86-year comeback to win the World Series. If he doesn't steal on Rivera and get in scoring position, and then the single through the Miller, which I think was Miller that hit it. I mean, I don't even remember. But I know in that moment, Lar walks, and then it's down the first. And I saw one of those documentaries on the 2004 Red Sox. And Terry Francona, I think he's got to be the greatest guy in baseball to play for, probably. He comes in and goes, Dave, ready to steal the base? Yeah, he goes, Millar gets on, you're in. Got it, Skip. Okay, get your shoes on, let's go. You know, it was like, they're literally talking about, you're going to have to steal the base if Millar gets on. He works the walk. Dave Roberts is in. Everyone in the ballpark knows they're down 3-0. He's got to steal second. The run he scores ties it. Ortiz wins it in extras. What's he do the next night? Wins it in extras, or, you know, and then that thing starts to turn around, and Ortiz is that far from being out of baseball. I don't know if you know the story. He got released by the Twins. Oh yeah, he got released by the Twins and called. He called Pedro Martinez, and he's like, "Hey, my brother, how you doing?" And he goes, "Not so good. I don't have a team." He goes, "Give me 20 minutes." This is supposed to be the story.
I didn't know.
Give me 20 minutes. He walks down, or I think he's at. I don't know if he's at spring training, but he calls the Red Sox or walks in, whatever. Give my friend a chance. So in 2003, he was non-roster player. Non-roster invitee, made the team. 2004, he's a hero. So he had been released by the Twins. He was out. Yeah. And then Pedro walked in and stood up for him. And that, you know, they're best friends to this day. Those are the great stories to me. Yeah. David Ortiz is a 500 home run Hall of Fame guy. He's that far from it being over. And Pedro goes in and sticks up for him and said, "You got to bring my friend in here. You got to bring my friend in." Who's your friend? David? Hey, we've heard good and bad, whatever. Okay, bring him in. Now he's the biggest man in Boston Red Sox history. That's that's amazing.
Phenomenal story.
And when you really get down to it, we're talking about these moments. If Bledsoe never goes down, I don't know we ever know who Tom Brady is.
That's very possible. We don't get a Tom.
Very possible. So you always wonder how many other guys have ever been out there. We won't know those stories, but they keep Brady around for a year and don't play him, and then he happens to work to that number 2 position so that when Bledsoe goes, and people forget, Bledsoe was a great quarterback.
He was a very good quarterback.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. And I think that they've become, through the years, they've remained pretty tight and friendly and all that kind of stuff. I know he was super supportive of Brady when they went through that Super Bowl run. Bledsoe's been like a super classy act. And I just hate that it gets kind of turned. And when Brady famously said in front of the press, he goes, "Why do we have to hate one or love the other? Like, we're pulling from the same end of the rope." When he took the job and there were people that still wanted Bledsoe back, Brady's like, "Why do you have to hate me or love him or vice versa? Like, why can't we just, move on?" Because we are. And Bledsoe was very supportive.
Well, again, like growing up in Toronto, so like in the early 90s, I remember the Jim Kelly-Frank Reich relationship.
Yeah.
And they were pretty much best friends.
Yeah.
So probably no one was happier when Frank Reich had that amazing comeback than Jim Kelly.
Which he also did in college. At the time he had the comeback against Houston, I think he'd also, when he was at Maryland, I think it was against Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
It was Clemson or Florida State. I think it was Clemson. He had the record for the biggest deficit comeback in college.
Frank Reich did? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Before that game, he also had the record for like 30 points down in college and brought Maryland back and won a game. But that wasn't, to this day, of a lot of football games I've seen, how Houston blew that lead. It does seem pretty crazy.
Yeah, I did actually. It's one of the other shows I do. Actually, you're going to be a guest on one of them. I'm just voluntold you to be one of them.
I'm with you, brother. I'm there.
Yeah, because I look at old classic football games.
Yeah.
And I do one with one other gentleman, Glenn Pulowski, who is this great triathlete out of Buffalo. But we just sort of like look at random stuff. Sometimes we just sort of like goof on more things. The last thing we recorded that's going to go up soon, we looked at Disco Demolition Night. But with another gentleman I do with Paul Lawrence, we're doing chronologically the Super Bowls. And we're pretty close to the Doug Williams game.
Gotcha.
So
it was an interesting 18 plays for 35 points.
Well, we always look to have sort of guests on that. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would love to have you on that.
Let's pick up what we were discussing something the other day. So I'm coaching college baseball again as well as softball. And I'm in the bullpen the other day with a lot of young pitchers, and we're talking about different things about the game. And from a standpoint of how they perform, and this is a talk I'm having with other baseball buddies, they're all into now. There's a whole industry of spin rates and vertical and horizontal drop and all. So these kids can't throw a strike if their life depended on it. They go to one of these pitching mills and they're like, oh, the run on your fastball is that. Now, it missed by 15 inches of target. So they get in the game, they walk people, they hit people, they can't pitch worth a damn. And I'm telling stories about Greg Maddux and hitting spots and knowing how to pitch. And they're looking at me like, who cares, old man? My vertical spin rate is what, or, the Rap Soto says whatever. And they're functionally illiterate on how to play baseball. I'm not kidding. I'm not just trying to be old man, get off my lawn.
No, I hear what you're saying.
And we're talking the other day about total approach to why we play. Now, you and I are 10 years apart, but I grew up in America with 3 stations, CBS, ABC, NBC, and you might get one of the UHF channels. You might get the local. But I watch pro football, and the guy up here, I love Sonny Jurgensen, all the helmets up there, Jurgensen. I wanted to be Sonny Jurgensen. So when I was 6 and I went to my first Redskin game, I wanted to be on that field and be a professional football player. That was my dream. My parents didn't put that dream in my head. I didn't have a tutor, coach, or anything. I wanted to be in pro football because I thought that made us famous. And we're a part of what happens today. I like this free market. We can get on and talk. If people want to listen to us, wonderful. If they never listen to us, we don't do as well in the industry. So it's a free market now. Mm-hmm. But in the past, you became famous by achieving something. And now people are famous for being famous.
Well, yeah, that never existed back then, but yeah.
Right. And so we thought in terms of, at least I did, dreaming the big dream. So when I'm around these kids, what they're being taught about the sport is, I'm afraid, it's how to get TikTok moments, get social media moments, hit the home run, flip the bat, show up the pitcher. So we were discussing this the other day. I can't stand celebrations on a field.
Yeah, that's where we're different, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. So in that light, I was listening to a former big leaguer do a thing on the 40 unwritten rules of baseball and where they stand today. Mm-hmm. And he was discussing these very things about celebrations, what you should not do in the past. So I'm going to throw this out to start with. I think pro football is ridiculous. I really do. I think, and one of the most egregious examples was the kid that, God, what was it? He took an onside kick or something like that. I want to say it was not prepared on this, but it was Pittsburgh and somebody. Anyway, he takes the ball down to the 1 and does the pose and then totally gets destroyed, hit, and the ball gets knocked out of the end zone. He is inches away from scoring a touchdown.
Well, then he deserved it.
Right. But see, the thing is, his team just suffered. His fan base just suffered. But he had to have the moment. 1 yard from the end zone, He had to have the moment. There was a time when you never played pro football again if you did that. So, talk to me.
Okay, no, I totally hear what you're saying. And if that guy would have done that 1 more yard, would have thought it was awesome. I like swagger. I like watching that. I might be one of the few people who I would pay more to watch Angel Reese play than Caitlin Clark, even though I know Caitlin Clark's the better player. Angel's got that swagger. Angel's a star.
Okay, I love you, man, but we're going to differ on that kind of stuff.
No, that's fine. I knew that we were going there. We were going to be in a different orbit here. That's okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's because we have different
with Trudeau supporters, so it's okay.
Right. But tell me if you don't agree with this.
Sure.
It's because we have different stakes. It sounds like what you're saying is the swagger thing is entertaining to you, and you put a premium on that. Fair?
If you've earned it. Earned it. So let's say when somebody does a touchdown celebration or a pick six celebration or an interception celebration, love it. Saying that, if you you get like a 9-yard reception in your half of the field, and you go, look at this. Come on.
Okay.
We're not celebrating. It's not worth celebrating the first down. Celebrate, the old saying, or the new saying, whichever it is, act like you've been there before. And I believe in a combination of that and then trying to entertain people at the same time. Swagger is entertaining. False swagger is embarrassing.
All right, let me give you an example I had coaching several years ago. I'm coaching several years ago baseball. I mean, I'm talking 25 plus years ago. And I had a pitcher that I put in who never got time, and this is his chance to shine, and we're playing a really bad team. And I kind of emptied the bench of starters. I mean, I'm bringing starters in. I'm emptying the bench and putting other kids in. We should win. We should coast. This is this bad a team playing college baseball. My guy goes out on the mound and he's horrible. He's just horrible. He gives his team a chance to be in the game. And my guys that start are saying little to nothing on the bench. I mean, they're just kind of like, we start all the time. I don't know what this is like. I'm in the dugout. They're not being detrimental or negative. They're just not doing much of anything. So the starter comes in. I take him off the mound. He kind of shows his ass, not at me, but he kind of shows his ass coming off the field. I come out and say, what's your problem? He goes, Coach, I don't know how I can be expected to pitch when nobody on the bench was up. I didn't hear any kind of. So I said, hey, come around back to the dugout. So we come around the dugout. So let me ask him, you ever played third? Yeah, Coach, I played third. I said, all right, start of the inning. Nobody out, nobody on. You're at third base. One hop ground ball right to you. What's your objective? Coach, I don't know what you're talking about. What's your objective? Coach, what? I said, throw the ball to first before the runner gets there, right? You catch a ground ball, you throw the runner out before the runner gets there, right? And he goes, yes. How emotionally jacked up do you have to be to do that? How many fans do you need to hear in the stands? This is a game, and I'm emotional saying this, this is a game of execution. I don't give a rat's ass who's cheering for me. I don't care how many people are booing me. You play the game between the lines. You're bitching right now about what the bench did or didn't do because you got your ass handed to you on the mound. So you're making this excuse. So I run into this all the time with kids. They're like, Coach, we have to cheer. We have to. I'm like, then you can't play this game. Then you can't play this. Time and time again, I've played another team that's very vocal. You put 3 runs up. I'm like, guys, what check your dugout. They're all quiet. You just shut them the hell up. Their whole game is scream, holler, rip things off the ceiling of the dugout. If you want to shut them up and win the game, put up runs. Go play better than them.
Okay.
But if you play on emotion, I can tell you, if you play on emotion, you'll die on that emotion. And as emotional as I am saying that, what I've learned is the best players I've ever seen, you couldn't tell if they were up 10 runs or down 10 runs. You don't know what the hell's happening.
I totally hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree.
Right.
But yeah, sort of like borrowing from Gladiator, am I not entertained?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just stick with baseball. I get a kick with the Jays, because I'm a Jays fan, obviously from Canada, of the home run jacket. Now I'm here in Seattle, okay, you get a home run, you get the Trident. You know, and so I guess with me, if you've done something very important, I don't have a problem celebrating it. I have a problem when you celebrate minuscule things. And again, that's maybe just the entertainer in me, I suppose. Saying that, I also respect the hell out of the person who gets their 100th touchdown and just hands the ball to the ref. Like nothing happened.
Jim Brown.
I love, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I respect both, but the younger people in the younger generation unfortunately need to be entertained in some capacity. And I think baseball's lost a cool factor.
I get it. You do. Well, now one thing about it is with short attention spans, social media, all the other things I can blame it on.
Yeah.
When I'm watching a game, I mean, I don't ever go to a game. I don't have a watch in my hand, and I get ridiculed and laughed at and all that. But with the watch, I can tell you everything that's happening. I can tell you the speed of the game, like any level of baseball. The catchers throw down the
scorecard. But I mean,
yeah.
You and I were from a different generation, and a friend of mine was sort of like saying, like, it's really tragic that there's not more young African American kids playing baseball. It's because they don't have the facilities. Like, no, they're doing something else.
It's partly cultural because black kids that I've worked with in pro baseball especially say, and I've mentioned this to you, they'll go like, their friends are like, hey, why are you playing a white guy sport? It's considered in their culture like a white guy sport. So why aren't you playing football and basketball? Now, the economics, as I've mentioned, Andrew McCutcheon's article a few years ago, he had banked his college career and getting his school paid for him playing football, got his knee hurt. All the scholarships for football dried up, and he signed professionally in baseball. That is an aspect of it for sure. But I do think that, yeah, well, and I coach a lot of Dominican kids. Some kids I've had Venezuela, I've had other kids from other parts of the world. But in Dominican culture, baseball is everything. Now, there is some soccer, there's some leaning towards other sports that go on there, they tell me. But in Dominican culture, they want to show you they're the best baseball players in the world. So you don't have any problem motivating them to play baseball.
And it's sort of interesting too when we look at women's sports, right? Well, like I had a tennis instructor when I was in Barbados because I just wanted to be more active, and she was a former soccer player at Temple,
Mm-hmm.
and her dad was played semi-pro, and but just it was great going out there, but so. And I told her this, and like soccer for me is one of those sports where sometimes I struggle to get into because I can't stand the diving. But with women's soccer, they don't dive. Look at women's basketball. Yeah, maybe obviously they can't do the same fundamentals that men can do, but they're not flopping. And I remember asking her, it's like, how come you never dive? He says, like, because I don't want people like you thinking I'm a pussy. Pardon my language.
Right.
But
Right. No, I understand.
yeah, and there's something kind of like they'll leave their swagger on the away from that just to prove their toughness, and it's a weird dynamic, really. I mean,
Well,
women's soccer for me is far more fun to watch, actually.
one other thing on the whole thing about swagger and all that. Years ago, I think kids can buy into anything. Years ago, I'm coaching, 10-run rule applied in college baseball. We're up 10-0, 3 outs in the top of the 5th, game's over. A kid hits a home run against us that scrapes the back of the wall. He barely gets it over down the line.
Mm-hmm.
They come running out. They're jumping up and down and cheerleading as the guy crosses third to come to home. And it gave me a nice teaching moment because I never liked that everybody runs to the plate. Act like men, shake the guy's hand on deck circle, then meet the guys in the dugout. So it gave me this teaching moment. I looked in the dugout. I'm like, guys, how stupid does that look? And they're like, damn, coach, now that you mention it, that does look kind of bad.
Mm.
So I instilled in our guys, I said, I want you to hit the home run, do it like big leaguers did it. The guy at home plate shakes your hand. You go in the dugout, get your handshakes, whatever, but act like you do it all the time. And I got to tell you, my guys eventually bought in, and they look pretty badass doing it. Because like we'd hit a ball 6 miles, and the guys acted like nothing ever happened. And I'm telling you, psychologically, the other team was like, they had a home run. They didn't even cheerlead. They just ran around the bases like they do it all the time.
Yeah.
And they started to buy into it. And I thought that was far more intimidating than being down 10-0, making the score 10-1 and jumping up. That wasn't intimidating to me on the other side, that you jumped up and down and screamed and hollered when you're 9 runs down. I just thought you looked stupid. Now, the kids over there might say, oh, we got to celebrate our home run. I'm like, you're down 10-1. You look stupid.
But that's also infectious towards the fans who are watching that.
I don't care about the fans. That's the thing. As a coach, I cared about whether we won the game.
Sure. But
I wasn't playing for the fans. And I don't think a lot of guys in pro ball are playing for the fans either. They're playing to stay in the major leagues or whatever level they're in.
No eyeballs, no money. So
no, I get that. Yeah. And now what I will say, and I'm mixed on this too, that I've had a lot of guys that I have dealt with in pro ball that have, and I've even seen it. Fans can really be nasty and ugly to players, and they have an expectation that they should kiss their ass and sign whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't mind when I see a player say, I got to go to work, I got to go out and take ground balls or whatever. I hear fans like, wait, we pay his salaries, Now, he's at his job right now, and that is what it is. But I've always felt that I would hope to see players that were good to kids. I was in an indoor facility 10 years ago with a buddy of mine. Manny Ramirez was still playing in Japan, and he came in to hit. And I watched Manny pat kids on the head, sign their stuff. He could not have been a sweeter human being. And some of these kids were like even kind of removed from even knowing what he had done. Mm. Now, that's in an indoor facility, and the people we're in. I have seen guys at spring training that were exceedingly nice to people, and some that weren't so nice. And that's just a personality thing. But I see it both ways because I have seen players treated in fashions that I would think they might not ever want to deal with fans again.
Right.
Fans can be rude, obnoxious. They can really be over the top. And, if you've had an 0 for 4 day or you miss your family or something's going on in your life that other people don't know about, it's just, I think you play for the fans at some level. Now, Mike Trout, he throws with kids in the outfield. I mean, he's just like a poster boy for good media or good public relations in baseball. And there's some guys that are better than that than others, but I think you really have to kind of follow your personality when it comes to that. But I really don't think that players between the lines, many, are really thinking in terms of what the fans think. They're trying to keep a job.
Yeah. No, you're probably right. I'm just thinking from a fan perspective, it does get them more engaged to a point that, again, like for me, my line is swagger if you can back it up. If you can't back it up, like, you're just embarrassing yourself. That's my take.
Yeah, we are in a different world, because I told you, too, I saw a poster in an indoor facility, and it was Mickey Mantle with his head down between second and third. And there's a quote. It said, "When I hit a home run, I dropped my head and tried to get around the bases as fast as possible. The pitcher felt bad enough. I didn't want to show him up." And I'm like, I was telling some young people that last summer. I'm like, guys, this Mickey Mantle, he hit 536 home runs. And he was cognizant of not wanting to be showing up the opposition. That's what guys were like in that time. Mantle was a well-liked player around the league, and certainly by his teammates, because he was respectful. You know, the Elston Howard story, first black man to play for the Yankees, and Mantle would go out to the bus and eat with him because he couldn't eat in all-white restaurants. Mantle's a white guy from Oklahoma. I'll bet Mantle had probably never met a black person in his life from Commerce, Oklahoma, till he met, probably not, right? But what does he do? He's the biggest star on the team, and he reaches out to his teammate, who's the new rookie black guy that never had a black guy with the Yankees, and he's on the bus eating with him.
Right, but when we could look at that with other sports, and again, I'm not necessarily defending it or celebrating it, but in basketball, how many times someone sort of like will get a dunk and they'll hang onto the rim, and it's just their added swagger. In hockey, for all my life, and hockey they're known to be the most modest players when it comes down to it, but there has never been a hockey goal that I've ever seen in the 50 years I've been watching hockey where someone wasn't celebrating with their teammates. Football, when they were sort of like trying to curtail that, and I get that to the point where you're not trying to taunt your opponent, especially in a violent sport like football, where they call it the no fun league. And swagger sells. Swagger will get the next generation aboard. And I hope, whether we like it or not, that's how it is.
Yeah, I think that's conceding the fact, though, that kids won't love the game for some level of execution of the sport. I don't know. I think that there could be a new wave where kids understand the sport and have a different. Let me just say this, too. A few years ago, as a Redskin fan, we were in a really critical game. The one time I think we had a shot at the playoffs in the last 20 years. And there was a player that I don't dislike. I kind of like the guy. And the rule had been, do not use the goalpost as a prop for anything. You know, you just can't do it. Now, we could argue about that. But here's the thing. The guy fully knowing it, Washington scores a touchdown that puts them in that one score away from winning. He goes up and does the dunk over the goalpost. 15-yard penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 15-yard penalty. And I know there'll be some, hey, he had to get the swag on. I'm like, yeah, he just cost his team 15 yards at the end of the game. If he puts the spike through the goalpost above his team, I don't need him on the team anymore. Mm-hmm. I just don't. I think our objective as a team is to win the game. And if now we're kicking off from the 20 instead of the 35 or whatever, and I think that's exactly what happened. And basically the opposition got the ball at the 45 to start their next drive and then kicked the punt down and pinned them in the 5-yard line. So instead, the whole field position thing was swung by his choice to slam a football through the goalpost.
Right, and you had that with that game against the Bears. Well, it worked in your favor, but...
For the defensive back running around taunting the fans?
Yeah. And,
hey, to each his own. If that's what he wants to do, rather than being there. Yeah.
One of those things where I say, like, you haven't earned it yet.
Okay.
And again,
well, if they knock the pass down and he doesn't bat it into the air to the receiver, then he wants to scream and holler at the fans. That's fine. I don't think it's a good look in the league to go run it off and yell at the fans.
But at least I can justify it. You just helped your team win the game. Whereas in this case, you cost your team. Actually, he probably cost that whole season because they went to a spiral. Right?
They did.
And then Washington just sort of like took off and had that monster. Actually, when you were on my show, I think the first thing I said to you was congrats on this shocking Commander season. Right? And it was, I don't know, I like swagger when it's earned. For whatever that's worth. And maybe because I've just got one young nephew who I think is Looks like maybe he could be a nice little NHL star. I'm hoping. We'll see. But yeah, I
Well,
guess.
and I guess what I just said is
Yeah.
also I've seen this, and I know you have too. Matter of fact, I saw a guy that posted on YouTube like a 12-minute "Don't Do This" video, and it was guys dropping the ball on the 1 yard line, scoring touchdowns.
Right.
The big one though that really irked me as a fan is the strip sack of quarterback, balls on the ground, game-changing play could be made. And they're up and they're with the fans, and then the offensive lineman falls on the ball. And so the defensive player, I think, talking about the fans, has just projected to the fans or stated to the fans, you know what, fans? You probably not only would have liked me to take the ball from the quarterback, you probably would have liked for me to recover it. But you know what? I was in a moment. I was in my moment, and that was far more important than the turnover. That's the message I'm getting as a fan.
I totally agree with you.
Right. And so that's what I think we agree on. That's a problem. Or the spiking and cost us 15 yards. Any of that mess. But if you're saying celebrate after an achievement, I'm not a fan of it, but I get it. I do get it. I just don't want to see a guy lose focus on the field in the moment and put that above.
And that's sort of the hard sort of thing to do, especially when you're playing and everything's so emotional. I mean, like as a Blue Jays fan, one of the most iconic things, even though we didn't go to the World Series, you already know where I'm going with this. The Jose Bautista bat flip.
Yep.
You know, and he took a punch to the face the year after, but
a good one.
A good one, but he didn't go down and there was no mark on him. I'll call that a win for the Jays. I'm a little bit of a homer on that one, but
yeah. No, I was a Bautista fan.
Yeah.
But well, you know, I was listening. Yeah, but I was listening to a player the other day who was a major league pitcher, and having a friend that pitched 13 years has told me these stories. When you go into a series and you know the people you're playing against, you've had, you know, multiple year career in the major league level. If you're in a clubhouse, this is a reality. You're a pitcher, I'm a hitter.
Mm-hmm.
I take one in the back. Jimmy, also a hitter, takes one. Another guy gets low bridge, you know, gets one under his chin. We're looking at you in the clubhouse. It's the reality, and it's going to be like, hey, you're going to take up for us? So now you got to drill somebody on the other team. That's the reality. Now, drilling means hit them in the butt, hit them in the back maybe, but you don't hit them in the head.
Mm-hmm.
But what you have to do is send a message, hey, other team, stop hitting our guys or knocking our guys down. Because if you don't, you know, people don't want to hear that and think, oh, that makes baseball seem like really rough or tough. It is. It's played by tough people. And there was a story that came out on Maddox. I think it's one of the most moving stories I've ever heard. Maddox is playing. He's struggling. Greg Maddox with the Cubs. And Rick Sutcliffe has become like his guru go-to guy. That's become his big brother. And Andre Dawson's hit in the face by a pitch. And the guys are kind of buzzing in the dugout, kind of like, we got to send a message back. Too many of our guys are getting hit. Our star just took one in the jaw.
Yeah.
So Sutcliffe knows what's up, and he comes over to Maddox. He goes, look, dude, the team had just said, if you don't win today, you're going back to AAA. He's in the fourth inning.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and he's got to get 5 innings to get the win. And he said, Maddox is starting to tear up. He goes, no, I'm hitting a guy. And he goes, no. Get your 3 outs. Get your win, then hit whoever you want. He goes, no, I got to take up for Andre. I got to take up for Dawson, for Hawk. And he goes out and drills the first guy. He's ejected from the game. Everybody in the clubhouse loved him. Everybody. He gets sent back to AAA. When he comes back up, they said the first guy in his corner every day is Andre Dawson, the guy you want on your team because he's the star.
Absolutely, yeah.
But what he did, it may not mean a lot to a lot of people, but what he did as a young kid trying to stay in the big leagues was just drill the guy on the other team to take up for a teammate, knowing it's going to send him back to AAA. And they sent him back. And I just thought, you could get chills as a baseball guy going, took up for his teammates. Too many of his guys were getting drilled. That's the ugly reality of what the game can sometimes be like.
No,
and the game polices itself.
Yeah.
The game tries to police itself. And in the umpires today, and I work with a kid that's an umpire in the big leagues now. They have a lot of pressure on them. I think sometimes how they handle the first knockdown, the warnings that go out. Some of these managers that are just about approaching getting tossed, the fans like, what's he yelling about? What he's yelling about is his pitcher, like a guy gets knocked down and then they make warnings. Now, his guy that didn't knock down anybody has just been warned the ball inside might mean ejection. You just took the whole inside of the plate away. These managers come like, why are you warning both benches? They threw it out, So all that energy starts to build up in it, and it leads to tensions, and how umpires handle that tension can really lead to ugliness or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the umpires are they're doing too much guessing of what the intent is of people. And the game used to just police itself on its own.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we have worn out kind of probably the whole, the emotional thing. Last thing we're going to do here. Talked about the different sports. I just want to hear this last thing on.
Sure.
Which sport do you think does Hall of Fame best?
None.
Okay.
But, if I have to rank them, baseball, because they're as transparent as they can be. You know what the votes are. You know when things are coming out. Football, they've been working really hard on their transparency. Hockey isn't transparent at all, but because they started so early,
right,
there's not a whole lot of controversy. Basketball, their timing is perfect. We're going to do the finalists at All-Star Game weekend, and we're going to announce it during the Final Four. Perfect. Who's on the committee? I don't know. Who decides? I don't know. How do you get in? I don't know. Hell, I could be a voter. No one knows. Basketball's the worst by far, and that's why they're in the biggest trouble.
Now, I also know that from what you've told me, you get in a little bit into other fields. So one of the big criticisms I heard early on. Now, I love music, but I'm not that.
Yeah, that's why I wore my Sex Pistols t-shirt here. But
I got you. I'm not that big into one genre over the other and things like that. However, I know one criticism I heard early on about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is they're letting everybody in that's not really rock and roll. I'm sure you'd probably agree with that.
Yeah, rock and roll is one of those things, define it.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do because you can't even point it when it started. Was it when Bill Haley in the comments saying rock and roll, rock around the clock? Well, you can find harder rocking songs, especially in rockabilly, predating that well before. A friend of mine said, if you just called it the Rock and Soul Museum, none of this would be an issue.
Sure.
Because Outkast, for example, is a nominee this year. Is Outkast a rock band? No. But do they qualify in the Rock Hall of Fame based on what we've seen so far? Absolutely. I think they're going to cruise right in because their ballot there is no other band like them.
You get into the question of, do you change the name? Is it like just the Music Hall of Fame or?
They could have went Popular Music Hall of Fame or American Rock Hall. Either way, defining rock music, especially now when, if you look at any Billboard chart, most songs are dominated by rap songs with a pop bridge or pop songs with a rap bridge. There's not your standard 4 or 5 piece rock bands anymore that do well. They're still out there, of course, but...
Well, much like sports, I think music peaked in the 80s as well. We don't have the same sources of music. In a college class 10 years ago, I told kids, I'm like, you don't know what big is anymore because it's all relative. When you were limited to your sources of information, I said, yes. My mother was not a fan of Madonna, but she was absolutely sure who she was. You knew Michael Jackson. Prince died. And I'm doing a college class. I'm like, it's a tragic day. Prince. They're like, who? And I'm like, you guys have never heard of Prince? Half the class have never heard of Prince. I'm not kidding. Yeah. And to me, that's like, you got to be, because what did he die in 2017? Yeah. It was 2017. And I'm like, you guys have never heard of Prince? And no idea. But I certainly probably haven't heard anything they're listening to today, whatever that something is. I don't know, really.
Yeah, and I think like you said it perfectly. Just the amount of avenues that people have for that. I think of, let's say there was a dud show in 1980. You were talking earlier about the 3 networks, right?
Yeah,
It goes on TV on, let's say, NBC. It lasts 8 episodes. Well, those 8 episodes of a show that failed will watch probably more than a hit show on Netflix right now.
Absolutely. You're right.
Yeah.
Well, and some of those shows recycled on other networks and made it.
Yeah.
They used to do pilots of a show and blow it, and then the other network would pick it up, maybe spin it around a little bit. Let me ask you another thing about something I found quite famous because it's been 20 years, but you see more information on it now, is the famous George Harrison tribute. and what Prince did at the Harrison tribute. Are
Oh,
you familiar with?
No, I'm not.
Okay, all right. Sorry to put you on the spot with it. You got to go watch this. So the story was Rolling Stone magazine came out with the top 100 guitarists of all time, and Prince wasn't on the list.
Okay, that's wrong, but yeah.
Right. This is 2004. So Tom Petty and it's a Jeff Lynne from ELO. Yeah, and gosh, there's a bunch of other now. And George Harrison's son, they're all playing My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Mm.
And when they're playing this, I saw the guy that was on the drums. They're doing it at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Inductees, Harrison's going in. So they're doing a tribute. So in this, they're all strumming along on whichever type of guitar. Prince comes in, red hat, red shirt with cufflinks, black suit, and starts playing a guitar solo. And I'm watching a guy on YouTube who's a professional guitarist that teaches it. And I don't know. I have no musical talent at all. No idea what I'm talking about. But I know when something sounds right. I had a friend of mine who used to do talk radio, said he was in music. He said, when you're in music, you know when someone's good. When you're a fan, you know what you like. So here's this guy on YouTube saying, let me tell you something. That guy's not playing the guitar. He's breathing. That's literally breathing. You can't do that, what he's doing. You cannot make a guitar do that, yet he does. So he plays this solo. He falls back into the audience, and he has one of his handlers catch him and put him back while he's playing. And the drummer for this is on an interview, and he goes, I had no idea Prince was going to be here. So I'm looking up, I'm doing the drum thing, George Harrison, the rest of the guys, and I went, oh my God, that's Prince. So he goes, then Prince starts to do the solo. We have no idea he's going to fall back into the audience. So we're like, oh God, did Prince? Yeah. And he said, now Tom Petty did know that exactly what was going to happen. So the argument was Tom Petty went to Prince and says, you want to stick it to Rolling Stone? I'm going to give you your shot at the Hall of Fame.
That's great.
Induction. You do your thing. I'm giving you all the time on your solo. You got to go watch that though. 2004, you got to see this because when Prince does this, I don't know that anyone's ever done anything better. My other one's always on that is Whitney Houston, National Anthem, Super Bowl 25. I think that's the best anybody's ever done anything, in one time I loved Whitney Houston more than life itself. I just thought she was great. I thought she did bad music, but she was a great artist. But after that, I think the Rolling Stone does a new list, and I think they come back with Prince at 14 or something like that. But I never understood that. Like, why is Prince not in the top 10?
Because they probably just think of him as more of a singer-songwriter. They forget that he was doing all those great guitar licks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know music, but I used to watch Prince, and I'm like, that is some really nasty stuff he's doing right now. And I don't know. I just know it seems difficult. But he seems to be doing it easily.
Join the conversation. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.
So listeners, too, more to consider. We've had Kirk Buckner on today. Kirk, I've really enjoyed it. Please tell everybody again where they can reach you.
Absolutely. So I run notinhalloffame.com. You can find me on X at notinhalloffame.com. I did a Blue Sky, but I don't think there's a whole lot of people on Blue Sky. But it's notinhalloffame.com regardless. But also a big thing that actually I just asked Jack to be a part of, the United States Athletics Hall of Fame, because nobody trademarked it. So this Canadian did.
Very good.
Yeah, so we are going to go into year 3, and what I'm really excited about is that it's for all athletes in all of the United States. All you have to do to qualify is be 50. That's
okay.
It. So we're covering track and field, baseball, hockey, football, basketball, boxing, amateur wrestling, synchronized swimming, diving, all of the sports combined into one. And we've already inducted 50 people. On this one, we're going to have 25 more. And I've asked Jack. You said yes, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, great. So you're going to be part of the committee that's going to help decide who are the replacement nominees. And the great thing about this hall is it's completely transparent, and whoever is the top 25 get in, and we're going to tell you who they are. and we will actually tell you all the rankings from 1 to 125. www.theusahof.com. Look for that soon.
Okay, your podcast again?
The Buck Stops Here. You can find that on all the great platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube.
And I think you're in agreement with me on this. I'm putting you on the spot, but I think you're in agreement. We're just going to keep doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're going to keep doing this. And folks, if you like what we're doing, we're talking sports and talking not only history, but sort of the cultural impact and all the rest. I think we'll have a real good time. Kirk, always enjoy it. God bless you, my friend. We'll
Thanks
talk
so much.
again very soon. Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, subscribe and hit your notification button to get an update when we post another episode. See you soon.